700 years. 700 years before Jesus was born, God had a nation. You know that nation. That nation was sent to a foreign land, to a place that was not their own, and they were afraid. And this is what God said to them. When 70 years are completed, I will fulfill my gracious promise to bring you back from that place. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Right? Then will you call upon me and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me, and you will find me when you seek me with all your heart. It's Jeremiah 29:11 through 14. As you know, back in November, we as a congregation took several weeks to take an extensive survey. A large percentage of you responded. A large percentage. In fact, we were told by CRM that it was a great response. I'm proud of you for that. After David, if you would stand up, this is David Brooks. He's from Church Resource Ministries. After David presents today, you will have an opportunity to ask some questions. So hold your questions until he's done. I know that's hard for you, but please do that, okay? So what's the purpose of today? The purpose of today is to gain insight, to get an objective, outside, measured, and professional view of who we are as a congregation. This will serve as a starting point for our continued transformational process. Today is about learning and about asking questions. Today is not about making plans or decisions. We all need time to process this stuff. We encourage each of you over the next few weeks to think and to pray and to discuss what we learn here today. Think about how you can personally, not the other guy, how you can personally help our church family grow here. The leadership team will be meeting this week to discuss and determine some next steps. For all of us, when we leave here, I want your conversations to be healthy, thoughtful, and positive. Try to discuss these things from the point of view of how we can grow and get better and help our neighbors. And so, come on up here, David. With us today is David Brooks. Thank you, David. Thank you, David. You haven't heard what he's had to say yet. Don't clap yet. David is from Church Resource Ministries, a non-denominational group whose whole mission, that's their whole mission, is to help churches all over the country grow and reach their potential. David and his wife Kathy have 5 children and 4 grandchildren, and he lives in Manchester, New Hampshire. We can't all be perfect. David has been in ministry all of his working career. That means something. David has served on dozens of church diagnostic assessments and served as an interim transitional preacher in 10 churches in the New England region. That's a lot. Before it is, right? You'll agree to that. Before joining Church Resource Ministries, David served in the ministry in Colorado and in New Hampshire for 10 years. David is also a certified leadership coach who coaches other interim transition and leadership preachers. David enjoys just about everything in New England except the month of February. That's right. So once again, Please hold your questions to the end and join me. Welcome David from Church Resource Ministries. Thank you. Hope you don't mind if I join you in sitting. How refreshing to sing a cappella. I think it's a reminder that we're of our oneness. And hear one of those voices, and I go into so many churches with big bands, and I just was just blessed to be hearing your voices this morning, and that reminder. And thank you for the very warm welcome. Came and Peter saw me come in, and leaders recognized, well, that's the guy, that's the new guy, and they immediately came up and greeted me. And so thank you for the warm welcome. That is one of your strengths, by the way, here at Edgewood, is that you notice and welcome new people. So thank you, Matt, for the introduction. What we're going to do here, big picture-wise, you all, 75 people in your congregation took a diagnostic survey, and we want to commend you for even doing it. So few churches will be that vulnerable to have someone outside come in and look so intensely at you. But it's also a credit to you to do that, because it's just wise when you get into situations where you need help to ask for help. And so what we're going to do, what I'm tasked to do this morning, is give you the oral presentation of a 175-page report. Now, I'm going to try to do it in 30 to 40 minutes and entertain your questions after we go through the presentation. I won't hit everything, but big picture-wise, what we're doing is we're going to hold up a mirror and say, this is what you told us. And then along with that mirror of saying, this is what you told us, we're going to give specific recommendations to you based upon what we learned from you. So I thought if I sat here, I could pivot a little bit easier with what's coming up on the screen. So if we can go to that first PowerPoint. Oh, I have the responsibility for doing that. Okay. Don't need to point it in any particular direction. Like to start with the biblical basis for the work that we do. And there are many verses we could use for this. But for Edgewood, we chose 1 Timothy 4, where Paul speaks to Timothy and says, take pains with these things, be absorbed in them, so that your progress, notice that word, so your progress will be evident to all. And he goes on, next verse, it says, watch over yourself and your teaching. Be absorbed in these things, so that your progress will be evident to all. So, you know, it's hard to make progress without a baseline. And it's hard to make progress without some way to measure. And until you get the baseline, you can't really get measurement in order to make progress and see how you're doing. So, again, I want to encourage you, to your credit, you as a church have decided to get a baseline so that we can measure progress. And that's very healthy. There are, in every assessment we do, everywhere we go, we ask these three questions of every church we work with. And the three questions are, will you face the real issues? Will you own up to your part of any problems? Will you do whatever is necessary to change? We ask those questions going in because this is so often about a change, an intentional change process. And we have to know from you all, are you serious about changing? Because change is hard. Transitions are hard. They just are. And so we know that going in. And so we want to know up front, yeah, we'll do this hard work. We'll do what's necessary to change. And that verse, John 5:6, where Jesus is there at the pool of Siloam, and the man has been 38 years and lame. And Jesus asked him, do you want to be well? And it's the same kind of question that we ask churches. Do you want to be well? Because it's going to be up to you to take the steps to be healthy and vital and thriving. And of course, interestingly, the man at the pool said, well, I don't have anyone to put me in the water. Jesus said, stand up and walk, and he did. And you see, just his faith, he stood up and walked. And now, we discovered when we looked at those results, we said, you have several strengths, and we actually listed 22 areas of strength, and I've synthesized that, and I'm going to give you 10 areas of strength. You do have many strengths in this body, and I want to start there. We want always to start with being affirming, and I can tell you I can affirm you in many areas. First of all, worship service, sermons, childcare, those are your most highly rated ministries. When you rated your ministries, you rated your worship service, sermons, and childcare top. So kudos, whoever is taking care of the children during this time. They're doing a tremendous work. Yeah? So doing a great job. And it was wonderful to see so many children among you. Walking in, I came in on this side and noticed the classrooms and the children being taught, and seeing you all together as a family, seeing so many children. That's a very, very healthy sign. Edgewood, you're strongest in the Gen X and the Boomer age groups. That would be from ages 35 to 69. Gen X, let me get this, 35 to 50, Boomers 51 to 69. Two-thirds of you are in that age category. You also have a growing age groups of 30s and 20s. Those are the millennials. And you know, in today's church, those people are harder and harder to come by. You know, but you've got almost a quarter of your population in your church are millennials. Relationship is the number one factor for why people come here. That's healthy. I got to tell you that. I mean, it's about relationship, isn't it? So that's a very, that was the number one factor that you told us for why you come to this church. Small groups contribute to a high quality of fellowship. That's very positive. What you have going on, you have a very creative community group program. That's something to really build on. You have a high level of commitment to missions and evangelism. Edgewood is a giving church. You give 3,145 per giving unit. When you look at churches across the board, that is very good. So you are a very giving church. 86% of current leaders desire leadership training. That's healthy. I mean, when you're in a situation, in transition period, for your leaders to want training is very, very positive. One more, Edgewood, just alluded to this, has an excellent record of welcoming new people. I felt that this morning when I came in. And we'll talk about it later in the report. You do well there, but it kind of drops off afterwards. We'll have to talk about that later. But on strengths, I want you to notice how you rated your ministries. And I just alluded to it just a second ago, but you rated your top ministries are Sunday worship, sermons, nursery, 2s and 3s, 1 through 6, Sunday morning, okay? But what I want you to see here is, and the way I like to think about this, the bottom 5, leadership development, men's ministry, women's ministry. Some of you, am I in your way? Just kind of low here. Women's ministry, internet, greeters. Think about those as areas to be strengthened. Those are the areas we most want to strengthen, most need to strengthen, most need to work on. And part of the reason why I share this right here is because this gives us a segue into the main part of the whole report, and that is 4 critical issues. When we took all of what you told us and we sat down and we synthesized it and we said, okay, what are the main core critical issues at Edgewood today? We came out with 4 critical issues. Number 1, resolution of leadership issues. Number 2, attraction and inclusion issues. Number 3, overcoming the distance factor. You're a regional church. 65% of you travel 10 miles or more to come here. The average commute for you is 13.7 miles to come. So you come from distances. Now, you also have these community groups going on.
And I'll talk about that later on. That's a healthy thing that you have going on there. And the fourth issue is learning conflict resolution skills. Now, I'm going to go through each one of these are the core issues. So what I'm doing this morning, I'm trying to take this 175-page report and boil it down into the most important pieces, okay? With regard to leadership issues, the presenting issue for this diagnostic was this: should our lead minister also be our primary preacher? Sorry about that. Late on the switch. There it is. That was the presenting issue for how we came in. Nearly 2/3 of you said yes, the lead minister should also be the primary preacher. Now, there was a secondary related issue, and that is, what is the preferred preaching style at Edgewood? So that was related to, should the lead pastor be also the primary preacher, and what should the style be? Should it be a motivational, practical, or systematic expository style? And people here at Edgewood prefer a motivational approach with practical application. And how it shows up, here's a graph of how that shows up. Here are the leaders are here in purple, and all is leaders, and all of you who took the survey are here in the goldish yellow. So you can see very strongly you're in these two categories. A motivational approach that gets people enthused about their faith, and then a little bit more of an edge from people in the body was a practical approach that focuses on what people need in order to grow in the Christian faith. So we look at all of it together. There's a little bit of an edge in the desire to have a motivational approach, but with practical application. Okay? Now, that is leadership issue as far coming from the perspective of pastor perspective, preacher perspective, but there's also leadership issues coming from an elder shepherd perspective, because after all, New Testament, we know from the New Testament that leadership is plural. It's not about one person, and we're one body, and there's a polarity of leadership. So I will have to share with you here this slide. There was a question on the survey: current leaders are able to lead us into the future. And when you answer that question as a body, all of you, 60% said, 6 in 10 said yes, able to do that. Now, it's a little bit of a concern to us, because when we do this and ask this question, many churches, many places, we like to see a minimum of 70%. Anything below 70% is a concern to us. So you're not way below. A couple things to say about this. Most of your leaders are probably here in this category. I believe, in talking to Chet, our lead analyst, that the leaders themselves score themselves right on the cusp of like 71 or 2 or 3. So they didn't score themselves real high. So they know, and 86% of your leaders are saying we need training. They know, they're open to training and development and understanding how to lead the body into the future. So that's that piece, okay? Moving on here. Here we go. Now I've given you a little bit of the kind of big picture. Now I want to go back to, remember, there are 4 critical issues: resolution of leadership issues, attraction, inclusion issues, overcoming distance factor, and conflict resolution issues, okay? But we're now back to that first heading, and here I'm going to give you some recommendations. Given what we found, what do we recommend? First recommendation: with input from the congregation, the elders will develop a clear statement regarding expectations for a typical sermon at Edgewood and consistently evaluate the sermons. What we like to see, the spirit and the heart of this is we want to see leaders working together to make a clear statement about what the expectation is for a motivational speaker and how to evaluate that. Now, in the full-blown report, we've given you some help as far as kinds of questions to ask, how to set that up, okay? And the spirit of this, meeting Peter this morning, knowing that he's going to be moving on to another ministry, the spirit of this recommendation is that the leaders work together with Peter as he transitions out, and that you have a good parting and that you celebrate his ministry, working together. It's important, isn't it? It's every bit as important how a person leaves the church as it is how they come. It speaks a lot about us. Now, recommendation 2, with this profile of the leader and the preacher, change the primary role of the pastor from minister to leader. Now, what I need to talk about here just for a second is, well, what's the difference between a minister and a leader? Well, a minister is someone who serves people. A leader is someone who serves groups of people. So a minister may spend 80% of his or her time with 80% of the people. Leaders never do that. Leaders will spend 80% of their time with 20% of the people. Leaders get the work done through other people. Now, there's not a right or wrong here. You need both ministers and leaders. Most leaders are people who equip the people to do the work of the ministry. Okay? That Ephesians 4 passage is so important in our ecclesiology and how we get the work done. So that's recommendation number 2. Recommendation number 3, overhaul the current constitution, bylaws, and governing structure. Now, I learned something about you yesterday when we talked with the leaders. We took the first pass-through here, and I learned that this language of constitution, bylaws would be difficult for you. And the heart behind the idea of a constitution, bylaws, is how do we constitute ourselves as a believing community. Now, you may not have extensive written documents, but at the very least, I know you have articles of incorporation, right? Because we're a nonprofit corporation, the state or the Commonwealth, the Secretary of the Commonwealth requires that we have that. Minimum in that article of incorporation is usually our name, place of address, our purpose. Other minimums are we have to have at least 3 officers, president, secretary, treasurer. Another baseline minimum from the state is what constitutes the board. So those are things that you have written down somewhere, and they're on record somewhere in a file, because when we, in our churches, write out a giving statement and send it to you and say, well, you gave X amount for the year, we have to be a 513C, we have to have that recorded. Okay, so the heart of what we're saying is overhaul this. We're saying, what we're really saying is be reconstituted in your thinking about how you gather as a body of believers, okay? Other things that go into a document like this are not only purpose, but membership, when is your annual meeting, how do members come together, what boards do you have, how do committees function, those sort of things. Now there's a second piece to this, and that's governance structure. This is a huge piece, because the governance structure is what helps you to determine how to carry out your ministry, whatever is important to you. Your governance structure helps you to think about how are you going to accomplish your purpose, vision, and mission. Okay? And everywhere we go, we teach a policy governance. And we've been doing it now for 5 or 6 years. And we have resources for you in the full-blown report that tells you how to get at this. There's a great book called Leading Leaders by Aubrey Malphurs, where he takes governance structure and breaks it down so we can all understand it and really implement it. Recommendation number 4, engage in an all-church refocusing process. you don't know your vision or goals or the mission you're to be on, there's a process that we'd encourage you, we recommend that you go through to discern God's heart for how we're going forward. Now you notice that I put down here 4/8. There are 8 recommendations worth halfway through. Okay? So stay with me, all right? But what I wanted you to see here is that half of the recommendations come under this heading of resolution of leadership issues. That's just the reason why I put that there. So moving on, this I already spoke about, but I want you to see it. The pastoral role change, recommendation 2 is change the primary role of pastor from minister to leader. Among leaders, 7 in 10 said, yes, we want the next pastor to be someone who is a leader. And 6 out of 10, when you put all together, said yes. So it's pretty clear you want to move from chaplain minister type to a leader type. Next, recommendation 4. Now I put a recommendation 5 with this. Recommendation 4 was engage in an all-church refocusing process, cast a godly vision for evangelism and missional motivation. Now, you can see pretty well across the board, again, baseline, what we'd like to see is 70%, which is right here. And you can see when we ask you, what is the vision of a church? You're not sure, or you don't know. You can't state it, or the mission, or the goals, okay? And that's all forward-focused stuff. So that's the reason. This is the reason behind the recommendation to engage in an all-church refocusing process so you can cast a godly vision for evangelism and missional motivation. Now we come up to the second critical area, and I just have some slides to this area. This is a very important area for you. And this is the issue of attraction and inclusion issues. Attraction and inclusion. So let me start right here. I've got 4 slides to share with you. We'll get through this pretty quickly. I basically just want you to see that this bar right here is the sense of acceptance and belonging that we want, that we're looking for. And then the red bar is what we actually experience. Okay? So the acceptance and the belonging that we're looking for it's not being met for all of you. Okay? I have to go a little deeper into this. That's just the start. Let's take a look at this one. Acceptance and belonging. Here's a way to understand it. If you look in the middle, you'll notice the teens, they're actually experiencing more acceptance and belonging than they want. I saw that chart and I thought, have I ever seen this before? I mean, that's pretty awesome. So the difference is, they're down here. Okay? So they're fine. All right? What it says is, you guys are loving on your teens. They feel they're loved and they belong and they're good. Okay? Keep after it though. They grow up. Now, here's where we need to focus though. So among new attenders, notice the value of 19. When new people come, their idealized sense of acceptance and belonging is up here, but what they experience is here. And this yellow is the difference. This is what we call the disappointment factor. Their disappointment, newcomers, people who've been here 5 years or less, we're in New England. This is the disappointment factor, is 19. The other place where it shows up pretty significantly, and we don't know why, we went through all the data, we understand this, but in the data we don't understand why it would be so great among Gen Xers. Those of you, Gen Xers, 35 to 50, it's an 18 factor. So those are the two to notice. Okay, next slide. Got it? Got that picture? Now, another slide to help us with this. Here's where We know that this is part of what's going on in the previous slides. What this is about, interrelatedness, attraction, inclusion, levels of interrelatedness. Overall, as a church body, your level of interrelatedness is 34%. That's high. Now, what I need to share with you about this is whenever, I'm sorry, have you been able to hear me? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to stay on the dock here. All right. So what I need to share here on levels of relatedness, I almost asked for a lavalier for the other mic, but here we go. We're back on the same page now. Now, whenever this, the thing to pay attention to is this blue bar at the top, this overall. Whenever this bar is more than 20%, we have an issue. Okay? Now, it's not something we can't overcome, but we have to be aware of it. When, as a general rule, anytime a church exceeds 20% in relationness in their body, their ability as a church to reach new people goes down. That makes sense, right? Now, one more graph to bear that out a little bit. Role of extended family. Yeah, you know that might help. Oh, thank you. There's someone who's ready. Can we do this up there? You all set with that? Thank you. Okay. This is the last chart on interrelatedness. This issue of extended family interrelatedness. What I want is really simple here, really, to get. What this is saying is, for those of us who have relatives in the church, we sense our sense of belonging is met. Okay, we're good. But if we're in the church and we don't have relatives in the church, our sense of belonging, we're looking for a sense of belonging more than getting that need satisfied. Okay? Okay, so we're through the two critical issues. Next one is, got to get up on the same page with you, make sure I don't miss a note. We're moving on here pretty well. Overcoming the distance factor. Now, what I just shared, these two issues are related. So recommendation 6, remember I have 8 recommendations. I'm going to give you the next 2. Recommendation 6, focus on community groups as the initial place to invite new people. That's number 6. Number 7, engage newcomers at community groups and Sunday services as potential friends and sponsor them into the church as you would a family member or friend. Now, here's a statistic that helps explain this for you in your setting. Right here at Edgewood, 21% of the people attending here at Edgewood began attending within the last 5 years. Those are the newcomers. It takes 30% newcomers over a 5-year period to stay even in a church. Okay? It takes 40% newcomers over a 5-year period in order to grow the ministry. Now, that's just something we've seen over years and years of going into a lot of churches and collecting data and looking at churches, very similar to yours, too. So that's a little bit of a sobering statistic. What it says is we've got to do a better job of reaching people that aren't like us. That's what it really is saying. We're good with family. We got to improve with those people around, that are near us that we know aren't part of our own family. But it really is saying we've got to be willing to notice and reach out to people who aren't like us. Next area, this is the last area of critical issue. And I want you to know that this is pretty much universal in most of the churches we go to. You are not alone in this area. Learn conflict resolution skills. These questions here, we've realized that it probably was a little bit our problem in how we asked the question. We do this in a lot of churches. We're revising those 2 questions. So that's the reason why I wanted to bring that up to you. Now, these yellow bars, this is, for both of those bars, this is the question we asked you. You'll remember it. So my justification, being declared righteous in Christ, what our brother spoke about this morning at communion, not anything that we do, is from God's grace alone. It is total and complete and does not require any work or merit on my own part. So for both grace and justification, score below 70% there. That's a little, we need to encourage the teaching on grace and justification and sanctification too, because there's grace for sanctification. There's grace for who I become. There's grace for who I am in Christ, and there's grace for who I become in Christ. It's all a grace. Okay? So there we are on beliefs. Last major section is, in our report to you, we did extensive analysis called the Berkman for pastor profile. And as I thought about coming down here today, and I thought about where you are as a congregation, you know, you've already got a leg up in creating a profile. And when you come to a pastor search, you've already done some work on this as a body, okay? So a couple charts. How do you want the pastor to relate to the congregation? Leaders said priority in keeping people's working together, promoting unity, helping people work together. A people helper, including mentoring. You're strong here, okay? All of you really are up in this area. Promoting unity, helping, mentoring. Another chart. Desired outcomes to pastor's ministry. The combined, this is again a combined score, leaders and whole congregation.